Hi, Grace. Her voice chirped through the phone, bright and breathless. We got married yesterday. I froze, the vase of fresh lilies still in my hands. Time seemed to stop as those 5 words echoed in my ears. My son's laughter filtered through the background, a sound I hadn't heard in months. Then came the knife twist. Only the people who truly matter were there. The phone nearly slipped from my fingers. I set it down on the marble counter, my hand trembling. The sweet, heavy scent of lilies suddenly felt suffocating. This was Evelyn, my protégée, my son Adam's girlfriend, and now, apparently, my daughter-in-law. The same young woman whose rent I had paid for 2 years, whose education I had funded, whose career I had built. Have you ever discovered the person you trusted most was building their happiness on your generosity while deliberately keeping you in the dark? That hollow feeling in your chest, like someone scooped out everything warm and replaced it with ice? When the woman your son married has been hiding her true intentions, when your kindness has been used as currency instead of connection, how do you even begin to process that betrayal? I stood there, staring at the flowers, wondering if I should cry, scream, or simply laugh at my own naivety. $42,730. That's how much I had invested in Evelyn's future. Every dollar a vote of confidence. Every check a symbol of my belief in her. Would you forgive someone who took your financial support for years, then excluded you from the most important day of their lives, even if they claimed it was for love? I didn't know the answer yet, but I knew one thing. This wasn't just about a wedding invitation. This was about something far more valuable than money. This was about respect, honesty, and the painful question of whether family is defined by blood or by convenience. The phone buzzed again. A text from Evelyn. We should all celebrate together soon. Love you. My thumb hovered over the damn screen. So easy to type congratulations and swallow the hurt. So tempting to pretend this was just an impulsive decision rather than a calculated exclusion. But sometimes, the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and for others, is to recognize when kindness has become weakness. I set the phone down without replying. Instead, I opened my laptop and began to search for something I should have looked for long ago. The truth. This is the story of how I discovered the price of blind generosity, how I reclaimed my worth, and how I learned that sometimes the family we dream of isn't the family we need. If you've ever struggled with boundaries, been taken advantage of by someone you loved, or wondered if your generosity was truly appreciated, hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me. What happened next changed everything I thought I knew about family, loyalty, and self-respect. Stay with me until the end to discover the one question I asked that finally made my son see the truth, and the unexpected way this story resolves that might just change how you handle your own relationships forever. 2 years earlier, Evelyn entered my life like a photograph that didn't quite belong in my family album. I remember the day clearly, a crisp autumn morning when the foundation I'd built over 20 years was hosting its annual scholarship program for young artists. As the executive director and founder of the Hartley Foundation for the Arts, I dedicated my life to nurturing creative talent in underprivileged communities. My work was my passion, my purpose, my legacy. Evelyn Morgan stood out immediately among the scholarship applicants, not just because of her portfolio, although her designs showed remarkable promise, but because of the hunger in her eyes. At 26, she carried herself with a blend of determination and vulnerability that reminded me of myself at her age. Mrs. Hartley, she'd said, extending her hand with just the right amount of deference. Your foundation changed my life before I even applied. The community art program you funded in my neighborhood was where I first learned to draw. I was touched. After decades of philanthropy, it's rare to see the full circle of your efforts so clearly embodied in one person. Please, I'd smiled. Call me Grace. After the interviews, I found myself walking with Evelyn through the gallery where previous scholarship recipients had their work displayed. I can't imagine creating something worthy of these walls, she confessed, her voice soft with genuine awe. Everyone starts somewhere, I told her. What matters is having someone who believes in your potential before you've proven it. Later that week, when the selection committee was deadlocked between Evelyn and another candidate, I cast the deciding vote in her favor. It wasn't just her talent, It was that familiar hunger, that need to rise above circumstances that resonated with me. My son Adam had drifted through his 20s and early 30s without finding that same drive. Handsome, charming, and comfortable with the security my late husband's insurance had provided, Adam moved between jobs and relationships with equal casualness. At 34, he still hadn't found his purpose. Perhaps that's why I felt so drawn to mentor Evelyn. She represented the passion I'd always hoped to see in my own child. The scholarship came with an internship at the foundation's main office. Evelyn proved herself exceptional, arriving early, staying late, absorbing everything with remarkable speed. She brought fresh ideas to our outreach programs and connected easily with our young artists. "You've got a good eye for talent," my assistant Margaret remarked after Evelyn redesigned our annual report to unanimous praise from the board. "She's going to go far." One evening, working late at the office, I found Evelyn crying silently at her desk. "What's wrong?" I asked, alarmed. She showed me an eviction notice. Her roommate had moved out unexpectedly, leaving Evelyn unable to cover the rent alone. "I'll figure it out," she insisted, wiping her eyes. "Maybe I can pick up weekend work somewhere." "Nonsense," I said, the words flowing before I'd fully thought them through. "You can't work weekends and still manage your coursework and the internship. Let me help." The relief and gratitude in her eyes made any hesitation vanish. I wrote her a check for the rent that very night. It was meant to be a one-time gesture. It wasn't. 2 weeks later, Adam sauntered into my office unannounced, a rare occurrence since he typically avoided anything related to the foundation. "Mom," he began, then stopped short when he noticed Evelyn sorting through grant applications at the conference table. The moment stretched between them like a thread of light. Something shifted in the room, an almost imperceptible change in temperature. "Adam," I said, breaking the silence, "meet Evelyn Morgan, our newest talent." "Evelyn, this is my son." "Nice to meet you," she said, her smile warm but professional. Adam, usually so casual with everyone, straightened his posture. "The pleasure's all mine." That evening, Adam called to ask about the foundation's upcoming gallery opening, an event he'd skipped for the past 3 years. "I'm thinking of attending this year," he said casually. "Sounds like you've got some interesting new artists." I should have recognized it then, the beginning of something that wasn't about art at all. Over the next few months, Adam appeared at the foundation with increasing frequency. He'd stop by my office, chat about nothing in particular, and inevitably find reasons to interact with Evelyn. As their connection grew, so did my involvement in Evelyn's life. I helped her find a better apartment in a safer neighborhood when her lease ended. I covered her tuition when her student loan was delayed. I bought her professional attire for networking events, introduced her to influential contacts, even paid for her transportation to a major design conference in Chicago. "I don't know how to thank you," she told me once, tears shimmering in her eyes. "My own mother never believed in me like you do." Each expression of gratitude reinforced my certainty that I was making a worthwhile investment, not just in talent, but in character. When Adam and Evelyn finally admitted they were dating, 6 months after that first meeting, I was genuinely delighted. My son had found someone ambitious and kind, Evelyn had found stability and love, and I had found a bridge between my personal and professional worlds. "You don't mind, do you?" Evelyn had asked nervously. "I would never want to jeopardize what we have at the foundation." "Mind?" "I couldn't be happier," I assured her. And I meant it. How could I have known that I was financing the very relationship that would eventually exclude me? That every dollar I spent was buying my son's loyalty, just not to me. If you've ever built someone up only to watch them walk away with what you've given them, hit that like button. And subscribe to hear what happened when I finally started adding up exactly how much of myself I had invested in someone else's dream. The transformation was so gradual I almost missed it. Like watching a child grow day by day, the change is invisible until suddenly they're wearing clothes that no longer fit. It began with small absences. Adam would cancel our weekly Sunday brunches, a tradition we'd maintained even through his most rebellious years. Working on a project with Evelyn, he'd text, sometimes minutes before we were supposed to meet. I told myself it was good that he was finally showing interest in something productive. that his growing distance was just a natural part of forming a new relationship. Meanwhile, Evelyn's presence at the foundation shifted subtly. She still performed brilliantly, but her focus seemed to drift increasingly toward impressing donors rather than connecting with the young artists. She began dressing more expensively. Designer pieces that I recognized from luxury boutiques I occasionally shopped at myself. "Those are lovely earrings," I commented one day, noticing the diamond studs that caught the light as she moved. They looked remarkably similar to a pair I'd admired at Tiffany's the previous month. "Thank you," she said, touching them self-consciously. They were a gift. She didn't elaborate, and something in her expression stopped me from asking who the gift was from. Something told me I already knew. Around the same time, I noticed withdrawals from Adam's trust fund, larger sums than his usual spending pattern. When I casually mentioned it, he brushed it off. "I'm investing in my future, Mom," he said with a new confidence that both pleased and puzzled me. "Isn't that what you've always wanted?" I backed off immediately, not wanting to discourage this newfound maturity. After years of hoping Adam would take responsibility for his life, I was reluctant to question how that change had come about. At the foundation, Evelyn's requests for financial assistance continued, though the nature of those requests evolved. No longer emergency funds for rent or utilities. Now, she needed money for professional development opportunities and networking events that always seemed to fall on weekends when Adam was also mysteriously busy. "This design workshop in Santa Barbara will really help me bring new ideas to the youth program," she explained, showing me the $3,000 registration fee. I'd cover it myself, but with my student loans. I wrote the check without hesitation. The foundation had a generous professional development budget, and Evelyn had proven herself valuable. What I didn't know then was that there was no design workshop in Santa Barbara that weekend. There was, however, a couples retreat at an exclusive coastal resort, a fact I would discover months later when a thank you note addressed to both Adam and Evelyn arrived at the foundation office by mistake. Small inconsistencies began to accumulate like dust in corners I wasn't cleaning. Evelyn mentioned struggling with rent one week, then arrived the next in a new coat that I recognized from a boutique where nothing cost less than 4 figures. She claimed to be taking night classes in advanced design techniques, yet when I offered to connect her with a colleague who taught those same techniques, she quickly changed the subject. Adam's behavior shifted too. He became protective of his phone, angling it away when texts arrived if I was nearby. He began to echo Evelyn's opinions on art, politics, even food preferences, views that sometimes directly contradicted beliefs he'd held his entire life. "Since when do you like modern abstract expressionism?" I asked once, remembering how he'd always preferred classical landscapes. "Evelyn's helped me see the emotional depth in abstraction," he replied, as if reciting lines from a script. "It's about feeling rather than seeing, Mom. You should try to be more open-minded." That stung, not just the criticism, but the implication that I, who had dedicated my life to supporting artists of all styles, was somehow closed-minded about art. The most troubling change was in how they operated as a unit. Increasingly, they arrived at family gatherings together but engaged separately, Evelyn charming my friends and colleagues, while Adam watched her with a mixture of pride and something that looked unsettlingly like obedience. When decisions needed to be made, their eyes would meet in silent communication, and Adam would invariably defer to whatever Evelyn seemed to want. It was as if he'd handed over not just his opinions, but his autonomy. One evening, at a foundation fundraiser, I overheard a conversation that should have been my wake-up call. "The Hartley Foundation has such potential," Evelyn was saying to one of our major donors, an elderly gentleman who had been supporting my work for decades. "It just needs fresh vision to really make an impact. Grace has built something remarkable," the donor replied loyally. "Her vision has helped thousands of young artists." "Of course," Evelyn agreed smoothly, "but imagine what it could become with modern leadership. Adam and I have been discussing some truly exciting directions." I stood frozen behind a display, invisible to them, but hearing every word. Modern leadership. Adam and I. As if my retirement was not just expected but imminent. As if my life's work was already being measured for new drapes. That night, I called Margaret, my assistant of 15 years, and the closest thing I had to a confidant since my husband's death. Am I being paranoid? I asked after relating what I'd overheard. Or is there something happening right under my nose? Margaret was quiet for a long moment. Grace, you know I adore you, but you've always had a blind spot when it comes to Adam, and now it seems that blind spot has expanded to include Evelyn. What are you saying? I'm saying that you've spent over $40,000 on that girl in less than 2 years. I'm saying that your son has never shown interest in the foundation until it came with a beautiful, ambitious woman attached. And I'm saying that perhaps it's time you looked at what they do, not what they say. I hung up feeling defensive and unsettled. $40,000? That couldn't be right. I'd helped Evelyn, certainly, but not to that extent. Acted, had I? The next morning, I began to review financial records, both personal and professional, foundation expenditures for talent development that all seemed to lead back to Evelyn. Personal checks I'd written for her various emergencies and opportunities. The sharp increase in withdrawals from Adam's trust fund. Numbers don't lie, even when people do. And these numbers told a story of calculated dependence and systematic extraction. Still, I hesitated to confront them. Maybe there were explanations I hadn't considered. Maybe my growing suspicion was clouding my judgment. Maybe, as Adam had suggested, I simply needed to be more open-minded about how the next generation might operate. So I waited. I watched. And I continued to pay the bills. That's the thing about deception. By the time you're certain it's happening, you've already been deceived far longer than you realized. If you've ever ignored red flags because you wanted to believe in someone's good intentions, leave a comment below. And subscribe to hear what happened when a single phone call finally forced me to face what I'd been funding all along. I was arranging lilies in the foyer when my phone lit up with Evelyn's name. Hi, Grace. Her voice chirped through the receiver, that familiar breathless excitement that had once seemed so endearing. We got married yesterday. Time seemed to stop, the world narrowing to those 5 words echoing in my ears. My fingers went numb around the stem of a lily, water dripping onto the marble countertop. In the background, I could hear my son's laughter, a sound I hadn't heard in months. Then came the line that cut deeper than any knife could reach. Only the people who truly matter were there. The implication hung in the air between us. I didn't matter. Not enough to witness my only child's wedding. Not enough for even a warning that it was happening. Grace? Are you there? Evelyn's voice held no trace of shame or regret. If anything, there was a note of triumph barely concealed beneath her concern. Yes, I managed, my voice surprisingly steady. Congratulations. This is unexpected. We wanted it to be intimate, she continued, as if that explained everything. Just us and a few close friends at the courthouse. Nothing fancy. Nothing fancy. No mother of the groom, no family photographs. No chance for me to see my son take his vows. Adam wants to talk to you, she said, and before I could respond, my son's voice came through the phone. Mom, you're not upset, are you? This was just something we decided to do, spur of the moment. Spur of the moment. As if marriage were no more significant than deciding to order takeout instead of cooking dinner. I'm just surprised, Adam. I would have liked to be there. We'll celebrate with you soon, I promise. Evelyn thought it would be nice to have dinner next week. She's thinking of that new place downtown you mentioned wanting to try. Of course she was. The restaurant where entrees started at $70 and reservations were booked months in advance, a restaurant I had almost certainly mentioned within Evelyn's hearing. That sounds lovely, I said automatically. Social graces taking over where genuine emotion failed me. Just let me know when. After we hung up, I sat in perfect stillness for what felt like hours. The lilies continued to drip water onto the counter. Their scent, usually so pleasing, now seemed cloying and false, beauty without substance. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. Instead, I did what any woman who has built a successful foundation from nothing would do. I gathered information. At my desk, I opened my laptop and began to pull records. Personal checking accounts. Credit card statements, foundation expenditure reports, email correspondence with Evelyn regarding financial assistance. Line by line, I created a spreadsheet categorizing each transaction: rent subsidies, $22,400, educational expenses, $9,750, professional development, $5,680, travel advances, $2,300, clothing allowances, $2,600. The list went on. Each entry another strand in the web I had unwittingly helped to weave. The final total glowed on my screen. $42,730. $42,730. The price of my exclusion from my son's wedding. But the money wasn't what hurt. It was the methodical nature of it all. The careful cultivation of my generosity. The strategic extraction of resources. The a calculated decision to take everything I offered while planning to cut me out when I was no longer needed. I closed the laptop and pressed my palms against my eyes. Had there ever been genuine affection from Evelyn? Had Adam been manipulated? Or was he a willing participant in this deception? Was their relationship even real? Or was it simply the most efficient way to access my resources? My phone buzzed with a text from Adam. "Love you, Mom. Can't wait to celebrate with you." Evelyn's thinking? Thursday night? Evelyn's thinking. Not, "we're thinking." Not, "I'd like." Evelyn's thinking. I texted back a simple "Thursday works" and set the phone down. That night, I barely slept. Instead, I went through photo albums, pictures of Adam growing up, his gap-toothed smile in elementary school, his awkward teenage years, his handsome but directionless 20s. I traced the outline of his face in a recent photo, wondering when he had become a stranger to me. Morning brought clarity. I made 2 phone calls before breakfast. The first was to my lawyer, a woman who had helped me establish the foundation 20 years earlier and had become a trusted friend. "I need to make some changes to my will and the foundation governance documents," I told her. Immediately. The second call was to my banker. "I'd like to close several accounts and open new ones," I explained. "And I need to remove 2 names from my authorized signatories list." Both women asked questions. Both expressed concern about the urgency in my voice. Neither received complete answers. Not yet. I needed to see Adam and Evelyn face to face first. I needed to look into their eyes when I asked them why. I spent the rest of the day reviewing every financial connection between us. Foundation credit cards I'd authorized for Evelyn's business expenses. Automatic payments set up for her student loans. A lease agreement where I stood as guarantor for their apartment, an apartment I now realized I had essentially I've been paying for while being kept from visiting. When evening came, I called Margaret. "You were right," I said simply. "I'm so sorry, Grace." Her voice was gentle with the compassion of someone who had seen this coming long before I had. "What will you do now?" "What I should have done 2 years ago," I replied. "I'm going to start asking questions instead of writing checks." The next day, I received another text from Evelyn, not Adam. "Found a reservation for Thursday at 7. Wear something nice. We want to take photos with you. Our first family dinner as husband and wife." Our first family dinner, as if family were something you could declare rather than build. As if loyalty could be claimed without being earned. I confirmed the reservation and then did something I had never done before. I started planning how to take back what was mine. My dignity, my agency, and my son. If you've ever been blindsided by someone you trusted completely, hit that like button. And subscribe to hear what happened when I finally confronted the newlyweds with evidence of exactly what I had paid for. Thursday evening arrived with perfect, cruel timing. A sudden downpour drenched the city, turning the streets into reflecting pools that mirrored the glittering restaurant lights. I arrived early, deliberately choosing to be seated before them, a small power move that gave me the advantage of watching them enter. The maitre d' led me to a prime corner table with a view of both the rain-streaked windows and the entrance. I ordered a glass of Cabernet, the same wine I'd shared with my late husband on our last anniversary, and waited. They arrived 17 minutes late. Evelyn entered first, stunning in an emerald dress that I recognized from a designer boutique where I had taken her shopping 6 months earlier. For networking events, she had explained then. Adam followed behind her, his hand resting possessively on the small of her back, guiding her movements as if she were a yacht, and he the proud new owner. Their faces registered genuine surprise when they saw me already seated, wine glass in hand, calm and collected. "Grace," Evelyn exclaimed, leaning down to kiss my cheek. "You look wonderful. That necklace is gorgeous." It was my mother's pearls, the same pearls I had always planned to give to my daughter-in-law someday. Now they felt like a shield around my neck. Adam kissed my other cheek, the scent of unfamiliar cologne clinging to him. "Sorry we're late, Mom. Traffic was terrible with the rain." They settled across from me, a united front. Adam ordered champagne without consulting the wine list, a grand gesture of celebration. "We have to toast properly," he insisted, smiling at Evelyn with naked adoration. When the champagne arrived, crystal flutes gleaming under the restaurant's soft lighting, Adam raised his glass. "To new beginnings and family." Family. The word hung between us, loaded with assumptions. I smiled and raised my wine glass, not touching the champagne they had ordered. "To truth," I countered quietly. A flicker of unease crossed Evelyn's face, quickly replaced by her practiced smile. Adam didn't seem to notice anything amiss, already taking a deep gulp of his champagne. We ordered, or rather, Evelyn ordered for both herself and Adam, selecting the most expensive items on the menu with casual ease. I chose a simple fish dish. My appetite diminished by the conversation to come. "So," I began once the waiter had departed, "tell me about the wedding." They exchanged quick glances before launching into a clearly rehearsed narrative. "It was so perfect, Grace," Evelyn gushed. "Just us and 2 friends as witnesses at the courthouse. No fuss, no stress. Then, a lovely lunch afterward. Very intimate," Adam added, his voice oddly formal. "We wanted something authentic, you know? Not some big production." "I see," I said, taking a measured sip of my wine. "And this decision to exclude me, was that authentic too? Or simply convenient?" The bluntness of my question caught them off guard. Adam's smile faltered. Evelyn's hand tightened around her champagne flute. "Mom, it wasn't like that." "Then what was it like, Adam?" I kept my voice soft, controlled. "Help me understand why my only son wouldn't want his mother at his wedding." Evelyn jumped in smoothly, her hand covering Adam's on the table. "Grace, please don't think of it as exclusion. We truly wanted a private moment, just for us. We're planning a proper reception in a few months where everyone can celebrate with us." "Everyone," I repeated. "How inclusive. And who will be paying for this reception, may I ask?" The question landed between us like a stone dropped into still water. Adam shifted uncomfortably. "Well, we haven't figured out all the details yet," he hedged. "Perhaps the foundation could host it," Evelyn suggested brightly. "A celebration of art and love. It would be wonderful publicity for the youth programs." There it was. So brazen, so entitled that it almost took my breath away. My family foundation, built over decades of dedication, reduced to a convenient party venue for a wedding I hadn't been invited to attend. "That's an interesting suggestion," I said carefully, "considering the foundation has already contributed quite substantially to your relationship." Adam frowned. "What are you talking about?" "I've been reviewing my finances," I explained, withdrawing a slim folder from my handbag. "Both personal and professional. It makes for fascinating reading." I opened the folder and slid a single sheet of paper across the table, the spreadsheet I had created, with every dollar categorized and totaled. $42,730, I said as they stared at the numbers. "That's how much I've directly provided to Evelyn over the past 2 years. Not including the countless introductions to influential people, the credibility my name lent to her career, or the emotional investment I made in someone I thought would become family in more than just legal terms." Adam's face drained of color as he scanned the list. Evelyn's expression hardened almost imperceptibly before softening into a look of wounded innocence. "Grace, these were all investments in my career and education," she protested. "You offered that support freely. I never asked—" "Let me stop you there," I interrupted gently. We both know that's not entirely true. The emergency rent assistance when your roommate suddenly moved out? The design conference in Chicago that coincided with Adam's business trip to the same city? The professional wardrobe that somehow included evening gowns and resort wear? I turned to my son, whose eyes remained fixed on the spreadsheet. Adam, did you know about all this? His silence was answer enough. I didn't think so, I continued. Which raises an interesting question about the foundation of your marriage. If one partner is systematically extracting resources from the other's mother while keeping that partner in the dark, what exactly is being built? The waiter arrived with our appetizers, forcing a momentary pause in the conversation. None of us moved to touch the food. After he left, Evelyn's demeanor changed. The wounded innocence disappeared, replaced by cool assessment. I've always been grateful for your support, Grace, she said, her voice lower, more controlled. But let's be honest, you offered most of it without my asking. You wanted to mentor me, to shape me into something, your perfect protégé, maybe even the daughter you never had. Adam looked between us, confusion evident on his face. That's not fair, Evelyn, he started, but she placed a hand on his arm. It's all right, darling. Grace and I understand each other. She looked directly at me. Don't we? I'm not sure we ever did, I replied honestly, but I understand numbers. And these numbers tell me that you've been using my generosity to build a life with my son, a life that conveniently excluded me the moment you had what you wanted. Mom, we didn't exclude you, Adam protested weakly. It was just one day, the most important day, I corrected him. And it wasn't just one day, Adam. It was months of planning, months of decisions made without me. Tell me, who paid for the marriage license? The celebrant? The lunch afterward? His eyes flickered to Evelyn, then down to his plate. I did. From my trust fund. The trust fund I established for you. Did either of you ever intend to build a relationship with me that wasn't fundamentally transactional? Evelyn's composure cracked slightly. That's cruel, Grace. I've always respected you enormously. Respect, I echoed. Is that what you call it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks remarkably like calculation. What do you want from us? Adam asked, his voice tinged with both defensiveness and shame. An apology? To pay you back? No, I said, closing the folder and returning it to my handbag. What I want is honesty. And boundaries. Starting now. I placed my napkin beside my untouched plate and stood. I've already made changes to my financial arrangements, the automatic payments have stopped, the credit cards are canceled. And the foundation's governance structure has been revised to protect it from conflicts of interest. Their expressions shifted from shock to alarm as the implications sank in. You're still my son, Adam, and I still love you. But love without respect isn't healthy for either of us. When you're ready to have a relationship that isn't built on what I can provide materially, I'll be here. I left them sitting there. The expensive food growing cold, the champagne flat in their glasses. Outside, the rain had stopped. The air felt clean, washed new. For the first time in 2 years, I could breathe without the weight of unasked questions pressing on my chest. If you've ever had to set a difficult boundary with someone you love, comment below. And stay tuned for what happened next. Because sometimes, the most powerful response to betrayal isn't revenge, but reclamation. The morning after our restaurant confrontation, the messages began flooding in. First came Adam's texts, a mixture of apology and justification. Mom, you've got it all wrong. I love you. We never meant to hurt you. Evelyn is devastated that you think she used you. Then Evelyn's carefully crafted email arrived, each sentence polished to perfection. Grace, I can't express how much your mentorship has meant to me. Perhaps in my enthusiasm to build a career worthy of your support, I've created a misunderstanding about my intentions. Everything I've ever accepted from you was with genuine gratitude and the promise to pay it forward someday. I read each message twice, then set my phone aside without responding. Words had lost their meaning between us. Only actions would speak truth now. Instead of replying, I called my lawyer and my financial advisor. We spent 3 hours reviewing every aspect of my connection to Adam and Evelyn, personal, professional, and financial. By lunchtime, I had a comprehensive strategy for disentanglement. Are you sure about this, Grace? My lawyer asked as I signed the last document. These changes are significant. Your son may see this as an escalation. I'm not escalating, I clarified. I'm establishing clarity. There's a difference. That afternoon, I visited my bank. One by one, I closed joint accounts, removed authorized users from credit cards, and transferred funds into new accounts under my name alone. I wasn't cutting Adam off completely. His trust fund remained intact with its original terms, but the unlimited access he had enjoyed to my resources was over. Next came the foundation. As founder and executive director, I had considerable authority, but the board of directors needed to approve major changes. I called an emergency meeting for the following morning, when the board members, longtime friends and colleagues who had supported my vision for decades, assembled in our conference room. I presented them with a detailed report. The foundation has inadvertently created a conflict of interest situation, I explained, keeping my tone professional despite the personal pain behind my words. An employee has received benefits beyond the scope of our established programs, and there are indications that foundation resources may have been misappropriated for personal use. I didn't need to name Evelyn. Everyone knew who I meant. I'm proposing 3 immediate actions, I continued. First, a comprehensive audit of all discretionary spending over the past 2 years. Second, a revision of our governance policies to prevent similar situations in the future. And third, a temporary freeze on any new expenditures that don't directly support our core programs while the audit is conducted. The board approved all 3 proposals unanimously. Several members expressed concern about Evelyn's continued employment during the audit. I believe in due process, I said. Until the audit reveals any wrongdoing, she remains an employee in good standing. However, her access to foundation funds will be restricted to standard expense reimbursement with prior approval required. As the meeting concluded, Margaret stayed behind. They'll fight back, she warned. You've threatened both their income and their status. I know, I replied. I'm counting on it. I didn't have to wait long. That evening, Evelyn called rather than texted, a tactical choice designed to prevent me from having written evidence of her words. I let the call go to voicemail, then listened to her message. Grace, this is beyond hurtful. Her voice quavered with what sounded like genuine emotion. A foundation audit? Restricting my access at work? After everything we've shared? I thought we were family. Adam is devastated. We both are. Please call us back so we can fix this. Misunderstanding. I didn't call back. Instead, I sent a brief text. The audit is standard procedure given the financial discrepancies identified. If there's been no impropriety, there's nothing to worry about. 3 days passed in uneasy silence. I continued my normal routine, running the foundation, meeting with donors, reviewing grant applications. The only difference was the conspicuous absence of Evelyn, who had suddenly called in sick indefinitely. On the 4th day, Adam appeared at my house unannounced. He looked terrible, unshaven, eyes red-rimmed, his usually immaculate clothes wrinkled. Can we talk? He asked, standing on my doorstep. Please, Mom. I let him in but remained standing in the foyer, not inviting him further into the house. I don't understand why you're doing this, he began, his voice ragged. Evelyn's been crying for days. Her career is everything to her, and now people at the foundation are looking at her like she's a criminal. Is that how you see it? I asked quietly. That I'm doing something to you, rather than responding to something you both did to me? He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. It was just a small wedding. We made a mistake not including you, but this response is extreme. The wedding was a symptom, Adam, not the cause. It was the moment that made me finally see the pattern. What pattern? He demanded. That you've been generous to Evelyn? That's who you are. You help people. You've always been like that. The pattern, I said carefully, is that every time I helped Evelyn, the emotional distance between you and me grew. Every dollar I invested in her future seemed to purchase a little more of your loyalty, to her, not to our relationship. That's ridiculous, he scoffed. I love you both. It's not a competition. Then why does it feel like I've been systematically removed from your life? Why did major decisions happen without my knowledge? Why did my invitation to your wedding get lost, while my checkbook was always welcome? He had no answer for that. Just frustration and hurt pride. Look, I said more gently. I don't think Evelyn set out to create this situation deliberately, at least not at first. But patterns developed that benefited her at my expense, emotionally and financially. And instead of recognizing and correcting those patterns, you both leaned into them until they became your normal. Adam stared at me, a flicker of recognition crossing his face before he shut it down. So what happens now? You punish us until we beg forgiveness? You destroy Evelyn's reputation at the foundation? What's the endgame here, Mom? There's no endgame, I told him truthfully. Just consequences and boundaries. The audit will proceed. My financial separation from both of you will continue. And we'll all have to rebuild our relationships based on something more substantial than transactions. He left without resolution, a troubled expression replacing his earlier indignation. It wasn't the breakthrough I had hoped for, but it was a crack in the certainty he had arrived with. 2 days later, the auditors made their preliminary report. It was worse than I had imagined. Not only had Evelyn used foundation funds for personal expenses, including what appeared to be wedding-related purchases disguised as community outreach events, she had begun approaching donors independently, positioning herself and Adam as the future of the foundation and suggesting that my retirement was imminent. The evidence was damning. Emails to major donors, unauthorized use of foundation letterhead, even a mock-up of a new foundation website with Adam and Evelyn featured prominently, and my role minimized to founder emeritus. The board was furious. Several members wanted to terminate Evelyn immediately and consider legal action. Let me handle this my way, I requested. There's a more effective approach than a scandal. What I had in mind wasn't revenge. It was revelation. The annual donor gala was scheduled for the following week. It was the foundation's most prestigious event, where major supporters gathered to celebrate our achievements and commit to future funding. Evelyn had been heavily involved in planning the gala before her sudden illness. She and Adam would certainly attend, if only to maintain appearances and connections with donors. It was the perfect stage for truth. I made 3 key changes to the gala program without announcing them. First, instead of the usual slideshow highlighting the year's young artists, I prepared a different presentation. Second, I invited the foundation's Financial Oversight Committee to attend in full. And third, I arranged for an independent arts journalist to cover the event. The evening of the gala arrived, the grand ballroom of the city's most exclusive hotel transformed into a showcase for artistic excellence. Crystal chandeliers cast a golden glow over tables adorned with centerpieces created by our program participants. Donors in evening wear mingled with artists, board members, and community partners. Adam and Evelyn made a late entrance, a calculated move to ensure they were noticed. She wore a stunning red gown I had never seen before, her arm linked possessively through his, as they worked the room, stopping to chat with our wealthiest supporters. I watched them from across the room, noting how they moved as a unit, how their eyes periodically met in silent communication, how carefully they avoided approaching me directly. At precisely 9 o'clock, I took the stage for my annual address. The room quieted as I began to speak. For 20 years, this foundation has been built on 3 core values: integrity, transparency, and genuine investment in young artists' futures. I began, my voice steady and clear. Tonight, I want to talk about what happens when those values are compromised. From the corner of my eye, I saw Evelyn stiffen, her champagne glass freezing, halfway to her lips. The strength of any organization lies in how it responds when its principles are tested. I continued. Recently, our foundation underwent such a test. The screen behind me illuminated with the first slide. A simple statement of our financial governance policies. An internal audit has revealed concerning discrepancies in our financial management, I announced to the silent room. Rather than hide these findings or handle them quietly, I believe our donors deserve complete transparency about how their generous contributions are being utilized. What followed was a masterclass in professional accountability. Without once mentioning Evelyn by name, I methodically presented the audit findings, the documentation of inappropriate expenses, and the unauthorized donor communications. As the evidence mounted on screen, all eyes in the room gradually turned toward Evelyn and Adam, who stood frozen in place, their faces masks of contained panic. The Foundation Board has unanimously approved a comprehensive reform of our financial controls, I concluded. And I want to personally assure everyone here that those responsible will be held accountable, not out of vengeance, but out of respect for the integrity that must define everything we do. The applause that followed was thunderous, not for me specifically, but for the principles I had articulated, for the courage to address wrongdoing directly, for the commitment to transparency even when it was painful. As I stepped down from the stage, donors surrounded me with expressions of support and renewed commitment. The journalist was scribbling notes frantically. And across the room, I saw Adam and Evelyn slip quietly toward the exit, their carefully constructed facade crumbling under the weight of exposed truth. It wasn't revenge I felt, watching them leave. It was relief. The truth was finally in the light, where it could no longer be denied or manipulated. If you've ever had to stand up publicly for what's right, even when it was personally painful, hit that like button. And subscribe to find out what happened after the gala, because when carefully constructed illusions collapse, what emerges from the rubble can surprise everyone involved. The morning after the gala, I awoke to an unexpected silence. No frantic calls from Adam, no carefully crafted emails from Evelyn, no messages from board members seeking further explanation. Just stillness, and the soft morning light filtering through my bedroom curtains. I made coffee and sat in my garden, watching butterflies dance between late summer blooms. For the first time in years, I felt unburdened. Not happy, exactly, but free from the weight of unspoken truths. The phone rang around noon. It was Margaret. "Have you seen it?" she asked without preamble. "Seen what?" "Evelyn's resignation letter. She sent it to the entire board and staff this morning." I hadn't checked my work email yet, deliberately giving myself space to process everything that had happened. "What does it say?" I asked, bracing myself for accusations and denials. Margaret's response surprised me. It's dignified, actually. She acknowledges errors in judgment and failure to maintain appropriate professional boundaries. She expresses gratitude for the opportunities the Foundation provided and apologizes for actions that may have undermined the Foundation's mission. No specific admissions, but no denials either. I felt an unexpected twinge of respect. Perhaps Evelyn possessed more integrity than I had given her credit for, or at least enough strategic intelligence to know when a graceful exit was preferable to a prolonged battle. "There's something else," Margaret added. "She's returning the full amount identified in the audit." Apparently, she and Adam sold her car and emptied their savings account to cover it. That was significant. Not just the repayment, but what it revealed about their financial situation. Despite all the money that had flowed their way, they hadn't built a secure foundation for themselves. They'd been living on the edge, maintaining appearances while burning through resources. I thanked Margaret and promised to be in the office the following day. Then I sat with this new information, turning it over in my mind like a complex puzzle. The doorbell rang just after 5 o'clock. Through the peephole, I saw Adam standing alone on my doorstep. No Evelyn beside him. He carried nothing but a manila envelope and wore an expression I hadn't seen since he was a child confessing to a broken window, a mixture of fear, shame, and stubborn pride. I opened the door but didn't immediately invite him in. "I have something for you," he said, holding out the envelope. "It's not enough, but it's a start." Inside was a cashier's check for $14,000 and a handwritten note. "First installment. We'll pay back every cent." "May I come in?" he asked when I finished examining the contents. "Please, Mom. I need to talk to you." I led him to the kitchen. Not the living room where guests were usually entertained, but the place where our family had always had its most honest conversations. He sat heavily at the counter, looking exhausted and much older than his 34 years. "Evelyn's gone," he said flatly. "She left last night after the gala." I waited, offering neither sympathy nor judgment. "She said she needs space to reassess her priorities," he continued, making air quotes with his fingers. "But I think what she really needs is space from the mess we created." "We?" I asked quietly. He nodded, meeting my eyes directly for the first time. "Yes, we. I was a willing participant, Mom. I can't blame everything on Evelyn, even though it would be easier." This admission, simple but profound, stirred something in my heart. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the possibility of it. "What happened, Adam? How did we get here?" He stared at his hands for a long moment before answering. I think I was tired of being the disappointing son," he finally said. "All these years, I've watched you build something meaningful, change people's lives, leave a legacy, and what have I done? Drift from job to job, relationship to relationship, living off Dad's insurance money and your generosity." He swallowed hard. "Then Evelyn came along, and suddenly I had value in your world. You respected her, and she chose me. It made me feel significant." "You've always been significant to me," I protested. "You're my son, but not your protege," he countered gently, "not someone you professionally respected. When Evelyn and I became a couple, for the first time, I felt like I had a place in the part of your life you cared about most. The foundation." The truth of his words stung. Had I really made my son feel that my work mattered more than he did? Had I created the very void that Evelyn so skillfully filled? "As for the money," he continued, "it was gradual. First just helping Evelyn with legitimate expenses, then covering things that felt justified but weren't strictly necessary, then actively looking for ways to leverage your generosity. By the time I realized how dependent we'd become on your support, it felt impossible to stop." "And the wedding?" I had to ask. He looked away, shame coloring his features. "That was Evelyn's idea. She said it would be easier to start fresh if we made a clean break with the past. I knew it was wrong, but I told myself we'd make it up to you somehow." We sat in silence, the truth finally laid bare between us. Not the full reconciliation I might have hoped for, but something more valuable, honesty without manipulation. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away," Adam said eventually. "But I want you to know I'm going to fix this. I've applied for 3 jobs this morning. Real jobs, with real responsibilities. I'm selling my car too. That should cover another $20,000 of what we owe you. And, Evelyn?" I asked. "Do you think she'll come back?" He shrugged, a sad smile crossing his face. "I don't know. Part of me hopes she will, once she's had time to think. But another part wonders if what we had was ever real or just transactional." The word hung between us, the perfect description of what our family dynamics had become. "I think," I said carefully, "that we've all been guilty of substituting transactions for relationships. Maybe it's time we learned how to connect without ledgers between us." Adam nodded, tears filling his eyes. "I'd like that. I miss my mom." For the first time in years, I saw my son clearly. Not as an extension of myself or a disappointing reflection of my expectations, but as a flawed, complex human being struggling to find his place in the world, just like me. Just like everyone. I reached across the counter and took his hand. "She misses you too." If you've ever had to rebuild a relationship from its foundation, comment below. And stay tuned for the conclusion of this story. Because sometimes the most valuable things we build aren't fortunes or careers, but the bridges that connect us after they've been burned. 6 months passed, like seasons changing. Gradually at first, then suddenly complete. The foundation thrived under new financial protocols that the board unanimously approved. Our young artists continued creating work that challenged and inspired. Life moved forward, as it inevitably does when we stop resisting its flow. Adam found a job with a small architecture firm, not through my connections or influence, but through his own persistent efforts. The position paid modestly but offered something far more valuable: legitimate pride. Each evening, he came home tired but fulfilled, his hands sometimes dusty from job sites, his conversation animated with details about projects and colleagues. He moved out of the luxury apartment he'd shared with Evelyn and into a simple 1-bedroom closer to his new office. Every month, without fail, he deposited money into my account, steadily repaying what had been taken, both financially and emotionally. We began rebuilding our relationship with small, consistent moments. Sunday brunches returned to our calendar, but with a new honesty between us. We talked about difficult things, his feelings of inadequacy in my shadow, my workaholic tendencies that had sometimes made him feel secondary in my life, our shared grief over losing his father that we'd never fully processed together. "I think I was angry at you for being so strong after Dad died," he confessed one Sunday over coffee. "Like you didn't need anyone, including me." "I wasn't strong," I corrected him gently. "I was terrified of falling apart. Work was my armor." These truths, spoken plainly, without accusation or defense, formed the foundation of something new between us. Not the idealized mother-son relationship of greeting cards, but something more valuable, an authentic connection between two adults who chose to understand each other. As for Evelyn, she remained absent for 3 months. No calls, no emails, no appearances at Foundation events. Adam received occasional brief texts confirming she was safe but offering little else. He didn't pursue her, recognizing that space was necessary for whatever would come next. Then, one crisp autumn morning, a letter arrived at the Foundation office. Hand-delivered, not mailed. The handwriting on the envelope was unmistakably hers. Inside was a 12-page letter, not typed and edited to perfection, as her communications usually were, but handwritten, with crossouts and ink smudges that spoke of genuine emotion rather than calculated presentation. She wrote of her childhood with an emotionally abusive mother and absent father, how she'd learned early that charm and competence were currencies that could purchase safety and opportunity, how she'd developed a finely tuned radar for people who could help her advance, how meeting me had triggered both genuine admiration and ingrained survival instincts. "I never planned to exploit your generosity," she wrote, "but I didn't know how to accept it healthily either. In my experience, nothing was ever truly given without expectation of return. I kept waiting for you to demand something back, and when you didn't, I began taking more, perhaps to force a confrontation that would confirm my worldview. It was deeply dysfunctional, and I am truly sorry." She wrote about her feelings for Adam, complicated but genuine. How his connection to me had initially been part of his appeal, but how she'd come to value his kindness, his perspective, his capacity for joy in small things. "I manipulated him," she admitted, "but I also loved him. Both things are true, which makes this all the more painful to reckon with." The final pages detailed what she had been doing during her absence: intensive therapy, volunteer work with at-risk youth, a modest job at a community arts center in a neighboring city. No grand gestures or impressive achievements, just quiet, consistent effort to understand herself and make different choices. She ended with neither a request for forgiveness nor a promise of redemption, just an acknowledgement of truth and a commitment to continuing her personal growth. I sat with that letter for a long time, recognizing in her words echoes of my own journey. The need to prove oneself. The substitution of achievement for connection. The fear disguised as control. After careful consideration, I wrote back. A shorter letter, but equally honest. I acknowledged my role in creating a dynamic that valued transactions over authenticity. I shared my own struggles with maintaining boundaries while offering support. I expressed genuine hope for her continued healing. What I didn't offer was a return to her former position or an immediate restoration of trust. Some bridges, once burned, need to be rebuilt entirely rather than patched, and that rebuilding would require time and consistent action from both sides. 2 weeks later, Adam told me he had met with Evelyn for coffee. Their conversation had been awkward but necessary, two people seeing each other clearly for perhaps the first time, without the distortion of need or expectation. "Are you getting back together?" I asked, careful to keep my tone neutral. "I don't know," he answered thoughtfully. "Maybe someday. But right now, we're both working on becoming people who could have a healthy relationship, with each other, or with anyone else." His maturity in that moment moved me deeply. This was not the son who had drifted through life expecting doors to open and problems to resolve themselves. This was a man making conscious choices about the person he wanted to become. Last week, an unexpected invitation arrived. Evelyn had been accepted to a prestigious master's program in art therapy, earned entirely on her own merits, funded by scholarships and student loans. She was hosting a small gathering to mark this new beginning and wanted both Adam and me to attend. "You don't have to come," Adam assured me. "I'd understand if it's too soon." I considered declining. It would have been the easier choice, certainly. But life's most valuable lessons rarely come from easy choices. "I'll be there," I told him. "Not for Evelyn, but for you. And perhaps a little for myself as well." Tomorrow is the gathering. I've purchased a modest but thoughtful gift. A professional journal bound in soft leather, with a simple inscription, "For new beginnings. Grace." It's not forgiveness. Exactly. It's something more nuanced, recognition that people can change, that mistakes can become growth, that endings can transform into different kinds of beginnings. The flowers I'm arranging now are not lilies, too loaded with memory, but daisies. Simple, honest flowers that face the sun and weather storms with resilient grace. As I place them in a vase, I reflect on everything that's happened. The pain of betrayal. The clarity that followed. The slow, imperfect process of rebuilding trust. The ongoing work of creating relationships based on genuine connection, rather than transaction or obligation. I've learned that sometimes you need to lose what you thought was important to discover what truly matters. That boundaries aren't walls but foundations. That true generosity comes without invisible strings. That second chances aren't about returning to what was, but creating something new from what remains. Most importantly, I've learned that family isn't defined by blood or marriage certificates or financial support. Family is built through countless small choices to see each other clearly, speak truth kindly, and grow together through both joy and pain. If this story has resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button. And remember, in your own relationships, whether the price seems high or the betrayal deep, there's always the possibility of something authentic emerging from the ashes of what was lost. Sometimes, paying all the bills teaches you exactly what can't be bought. Thank you for listening to my story. Until next time, this is Family Dream, where every challenge holds the seed of wisdom.